Hey guys, what's up? So today we're going to talk about troll priests, especially shadow priests, and we're going to talk about why troll shadow priests are so strong, and I believe that they are the obvious choice above undead shadow priests. Okay, so getting into things. We know that picking a race and class combination can be kind of tricky in WoW, as each race has different impactful racial abilities. So things like Orc Stun Resist, Tauren War Stomp, and all these different racials can definitely have an impact on the class and the race combo that we choose for launch. However, priests also have an additional aspect that you have to look at when rolling a priest. Priests have race-specific abilities that priests can learn from their trainers through quests, and these abilities are race-specific. So dwarves have Fear Ward, humans have Desperate Prayer, and the list goes on. You know, trolls have their very, very strong Shadowguard that I'm going to talk about in this video, and undead have Devouring Plague. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to get right into why I believe troll is an extremely strong race for Shadow Priest. Now, let's get on to Berserking right away. Berserking is kind of the main racial that you get that is a cooldown-based racial for trolls. And this does not affect the global cooldown, and it does not affect channeled spells like Mind Flay. So the only benefit that you're getting from Berserking and the haste increase is actually on casting Mind Blast when you're in shadow form. So it's not very strong. However, the way I would tend to use it in my toolkit would be when I leave shadow form to heal myself up, say I'm low health, I would then pop Berserking and you get to get some faster casted heals off on yourself. So that's kind of nice, but yes, I do believe that Berserking is not quite as strong on Shadow Priests as it is for, say, a Hunter or a Mage Troll. So that being said, guys, what is the undead class or the undead race working with? Well, they get Will of the Forsaken, which obviously is very, very strong. You'll use that a lot in PvP. Your other options are you have Cannibalism as well, which as a priest is not as impactful. That's really a lot more useful for things like rogues and warriors and mages. So that being said, guys, let's get into Troll, Shadow Priest, and Shadowguard. I assume most of you are familiar with the Shaman ability called Lightning Shield. Lightning Shield is a very important ability for shamans. It's a lightning bolt that encircles the caster or the shaman with a lightning shield, and anytime you are struck in combat, it dispels one of those 3 stacks of the lightning orb and actually deals damage to the enemy. Well, Shadowguard is the exact same ability as Lightning Shield. However, it costs less mana to use, and instead of dealing nature damage, it deals shadow damage. Now, the great thing about Shadowguard is the things that it will enable and proc for you as a Shadow Priest. So as a Shadow Priest, things that you are very concerned about are Blackout procs, Shadow Invulnerability, which will increase your shadow damage, and it stacks up to 5. And then also getting heals back from Vampiric Embrace. That means 20% of your shadow spell damage that you cause will be returned to you in healing. Now, Shadowguard procs every single one of these abilities. This is insane, guys. This means that you're able to stack up Shadow and Vulnerability much faster on an enemy, even if you're not able to cast on them. So like you're stun locked by a rogue, you can, by the time you get out of the stun lock from a rogue, you already have 2 or 3 Shadow and Vulnerabilities up on that rogue. So it's very low mana cost. To give you an idea, at the highest rank Lightning Shield for Shamans is rank 7, and it costs right around 370 mana. And your Shadowguard spell costs just over 200 mana. This means that Shadowguard is 100 mana cheaper for priests than Lightning Shield is for shaman, and priests should have a larger mana pool in general than shamans do, especially if you're enhancement. I know that this footage is all filmed on kind of an emulation server, But I can say that within the classic beta, every single thing that I'm saying has been tested and has been approved. So that being said, here's some information on Shadowguard. Shadowguard scales with your spell power. It applies your Shadow Invulnerability debuff. It can proc Blackout, so that means if you get attacked by a rogue in stealth, you can proc Blackout even if you can't attack, which is huge. Okay, what else, guys? It also generates health from Vampiric Embrace ticks. Also, it causes casting pushback, so Shadowguard does proc on spells, so when you are hit with a direct damage spell, that is something like Frostbolt, Fire Blast, things like that, Lightning Bolt, all those kind of abilities, it'll proc. So it procs on damage from spells, and it will cause casting pushback. So if you have a Frost Mage casting Frost Bolts in your face, and the one Frostbolt hits you, the second cast that they're already, starting to cast, that one will suffer spell pushback. So that is insane. This all from one Shadow Priest ability that is only available for trolls. And like I said, it's a very cheap ability costing 250 mana. So it's not like you can use it once and then you're, out of mana. You're going to be able to just continually keep this up on yourself. So right about now, Shadowguard should be sounding pretty nice if you are thinking of playing a Horde Priest. However, a lot of you like Undead, which I do too, and a lot of you are probably saying, well, Devouring Plague is very strong. However, Devouring Plague only stacks one Shadow Invulnerability. It costs a huge amount of mana. It costs around 900 mana. You can spec into some cheaper Shadow spells, and it'll cost a little less, but it is right around 900 mana, which is an insane amount of mana, and it's a 3-minute cooldown. Not to mention, you have to understand, guys, that if you are playing Undead Shadow Priest, you're going up against a lot of Paladins in Battlegrounds, and you're going up against Dwarves out in World PvP. Dwarves with their Stone Form can dispel your disease, and also Paladins can dispel your diseases, okay? And also other priests can dispel your disease. That being said, you face a lot of dispel issues with a 3-minute cooldown, which can be very frustrating to have to deal with. So, now, Alliance don't have very many offensive dispellers. We don't have to worry about being against shamans. So that being said, you have less people that are going to be dispelling your Shadowguard. But you have lots of Paladins and Dwarves that will remove your Devouring Plague. So I want you guys to remember that. That is a big thing. We're not living in a sandbox here. You will, when you go up against enemies, they will be, reacting to what you're doing. So if you have a strong ability like Devouring Plague, you also have to understand that many people know that ability is very strong, and they'll be ready to handle that ability once it comes their way. So like I said, a lot of them will be making sure they dispel it right away, and they want to keep that debuff off of them. All right, Undead Priests do have the ability Touch of Weakness. Now, it doesn't scale quite as well as Shadowguard. However, it does do damage when you are hit with melee attacks. Remember that, melee attacks. So it is a decent ability. However, it causes less damage. It costs right around 180 mana, I believe, and it only has one charge till it needs to be reapplied. So it's not like Shadowguard where it has 3, and like I said, it can only be used with melee attacks. So if someone's casting a spell on you, it will not be applied to them. It is only on melee attacks. That being said, Touch of Weakness is really nice. I'm not going to lie. It's very good against melee, and it's a good ability that undeads have. However, Shadowguard is by far better. Not only is Shadowguard much better, but trolls also have their Hex ability, which is a curse that applies a 20% healing reduction to the target. The rank 1 ability also reduces physical damage by 2, and the highest rank reduces it by 20. However, I would tend to use the lowest rank, rank 1, for that 20% healing reduction, and just anytime you're in a battleground, try and spam that out real fast onto your enemies. 20% healing reduction may seem somewhat trivial, but being able to spam that out for 35 mana, not to mention the fact that it's a curse, so most healers that you go against will not be able to dispel this. And this is big in PvP. The only people that are going to be able to dispel this are mages and druids. Oftentimes, you know, they're not the most reliable when it comes to dispelling, especially if they're playing something like Feral. And then mages, like I said, are not the best at dispelling things unless you're, you know, in a pre-made. So this is a very nice ability to just get across the board reduced healing on people, because it will kind of just tend to stay on people as I said, it's unlikely that people will be dispelling it. So that's kind of Troll Shadow Priest in a nutshell, guys. Shadowguard is so strong. I was blown away by using this against other people in duels and things like that. It is just so strong. The fact that it procs, you know, some of the most important things for Shadow Priest is also very, very big. One anecdote that I will state is I'm not sure if these emulation servers or these private servers have the exact amount of, you know, like the spell power coefficient with how much it stacks, because as you know, the tooltip for this ability says that it deals 116 shadow damage. Now, with very, very, very good gear, I'm talking Blackwing Lair and on some AQ 40 gear and things like that, I'm hitting for around 450 to 500 depending on how many stacks of shadow and vulnerability I have. Now, this, again, like I said, might not scale quite as strong on retail. The only proof I have of it working is on a level 58 Shadow Priest that was used in AV. And this Shadow Priest was hitting with the orb for like, you know, 140 or something like that. So I know it scales a bit. And I know that the level 58 characters had very, very little spell power. But like I said, I don't think it will be quite as strong as it is on these private servers or emulation servers. I don't think the spell coefficient of like how well it's scaling is actually accurate. But we'll have to see. Anyways, guys, that's kind of the Shadow Priest lowdown on trolls. I think trolls are super, super strong. I think they're a really good pick for anyone, even if the damage, like I said, is not as good. Just the fact that it procs Blackout and it procs, and it stacks your invulnerability. I think that is so strong for Shadow Priest. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about it. I know a lot of you probably will just stick with Undead just because of the way they look and they kind of fit the role of a Shadow Priest. Definitely understand that. I am kind of sad that this ability isn't available for Undead. But anyways, guys, that wraps up this video on why I think Troll Shadow Priest is the strongest option for Horde. The rest of the video is just going to be clips of, you know, Troll Shadow Priest in action. If you guys didn't catch enough of that while I was talking, maybe you wanted to see, you know, Shadowguard proccing and everything like that. Big shout out to all my Patreon people. Appreciate you guys. And I'll catch you in the next one.